Hello, my name is Austin Habish, the founder of Think Catholic, and you're listening to the Summa Theologica podcast, where we study St. Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologiae in a way simple and insightful for anyone to understand. The Summa Theologica podcast is brought to you by Think Catholic. Taking 2 questions of the Summa a day, we'll seek to summarize St. Thomas's responses, discovering the brilliance of Aquinas, and his Catholic faith is day 199. So let's get started. We're covering today questions 162 and 163 of the Secundae, that is, of pride, and of the first man's sin. The translation that I always use in these podcasts is the one generously provided to me by Ave Maria Press, the 5-volume set translated by the Fathers of the English Dominican province, which you can now get at a discounted price from Ave Maria Press's site by typing in the code SUMMA10. And so here we go. Article 1, whether pride is a sin. As we said back in our episode on vainglory, which is repeated in this article, pride is the inordinate desire of one's own excellence. And because the desire is under the aspect of inordinate, it is sinful. Our next article will serve to detail more specifically what we mean by pride, as well as it is the cause of other sins. But before moving to that article, St. Thomas gives us within this article how to distinguish pride from humility and magnanimity. So the magnanimous man stretches toward great honors, which he ought to reach for, and the humble man subjects himself willingly to those who are above him, whom he ought to be subject to, whether in regard to God or man. The proud man, however, out of a disordered desire for his or her own excellence, both reaches towards that which is beyond the rule of reason, as well as for the sake of his own personal excellence, does not willingly take orders from those who are above him. And a sentence from St. Thomas, pride may be opposed by excess both to magnanimity and humility, from different points of view: to humility inasmuch as it scorns subjection, to magnanimity inasmuch as it tends to great things inordinately. Article 2, whether pride is a special sin. Pride is a unique, particular sin because it has a unique object. That object, again, is personal excellence. Pride is about being great in one's own eyes, beyond what one ought to pursue. This is a unique disorder and therefore a unique vice. Speaking then more generally, pride is considered the cause of all other sins. It can be the cause of all other sins because every kind of good, whether it be riches or food or honor, vengeance, can be desired for the sake of increasing one's personal excellence. As it is stated in the article, pride regards a special aspect in its object, which aspect may be found in various matters. For it is inordinate love of one's excellence, and excellence may be found in various things. Article 3, whether the subject of pride is the irascible faculty. And this is kind of a tricky question. On the one hand, since pride has to do with an arduous goal, something difficult to attain, such as excellence, then we would expect to find this vice modifying the irascible passions, specifically hope, since the irascible passions have to do with arduous goals. However, demons do not have bodies within which sensitive passions are housed. So even without emotion, Scripture commonly attributes pride and anger to them as well. How that works, as an example, St. Thomas says here, we attribute anger to God and the angels not as a passion, but as denoting the sentence of justice, pronouncing judgment. So anger and pride denote choices only in entirely spiritual beings. Therefore, we can conclude that pride, insofar as it arises from some sensible object, let's say wanting the luxury car in order to become better, will include both the passion of hope in us as well as the engagement of the will. But for the demons, it will only have that willful aspect to it. As explained by St. Thomas, since the difficult thing which pride has in view is common both to sensible and to spiritual things, we must say that the subject of pride is in the irascible, not only strictly so called as a part of the sensitive appetite, but also in its wider acceptation as applicable to the intellective appetite, i.e. the will, wherefore pride is ascribed also to the demons. Article 4, whether the 4 species of pride are fittingly assigned by Gregory. The key to this article is the following from Aquinas. It must be observed that all excellence results from a good possessed, which is again why it makes sense to say that pride can be the motive behind any sin whatsoever. When it comes to the possession of some good, one can be prideful, first of all, by falsely attributing to themselves some good which they do not actually possess. This is called by St. Thomas boasting of what one has not. Next, since it is more excellent to have a good from oneself than be given it by another, which implies then a dependence upon another, the next types of pride will pertain to how one received such good. And first of all, one can be prideful by imagining that the good one has come from themselves simply. So just denying that what one has is a gift, at least from God, which Aquinas calls when a man thinks he has from himself that which he has from God. Or if it be not in denying that what one has been given to them, but then turns and says that they deserved that gift anyways, this kind of pride is called by St. Thomas when he believes that which he has received from above to be due to his own merits. And as an antidote and a response to these two types of pride, St. Augustine wrote, "What merit then does a man have before grace, by which he might receive grace, when our every good merit is produced in us only by grace, and when God, crowning our merits, crowns nothing else but his own gifts to us?" And as the Council of Trent declared, God forbid that a Christian should either trust or glory in himself and not in the Lord, whose bounty towards all men is so great that he will have the things which are his own gifts be their merits. The last form of pride consists in holding oneself superior to others, which is disordered not only because one could simply not know if this was the case, and moreover, should not desire that it be the case anyways. This form of pride is called by St. Thomas, when a man despises others and wishes to be singularly conspicuous. These are our four species or kinds of pride: boasting, at least in the heart, of what one has not, when a man thinks he has from himself that which he has from God, when he believes that which he has received from above to be due to his own merits, and when a man despises others and wishes to be singularly conspicuous. Article 5, whether pride is a mortal sin. According to its kind, pride denotes elevating oneself counter to our ruler, which is God, through contempt of his rules, which is, according to its kind, contrary to the love of God and neighbor, which is charity, and therefore it is a mortal sin. As taught by St. Thomas, it is written, the beginning of the pride of man is to fall off from God, because to wit, the root of pride is found to consist in man not being in some way subject to God and his rule. Now it is evident that not to be subject to God is of its very nature a mortal sin, for this consists in turning away from God, and consequently pride is of its genus a mortal sin. Article 6, whether pride is the most grievous of sins. Sin, we learn from the article, is made out of, its material, so to speak, is turning towards a changeable, created good. Yet it is also essentially, formally, turning away from the eternal good. And it is in this aspect primarily that sin, is sinful. For example, if a man eats a box of donuts in one setting, this sin of gluttony requires both his willful turning towards the pleasure of the donuts and at the same time turning away from the rule of reason which has come down to him from the first truth, the eternal truth, which is God. This is what sin is. Now, a man may turn to the donuts out of moral weakness or perhaps out of ignorance. However, he could also turn towards those donuts in contempt of the law of God in his heart, as considering himself above that law. And this would be a sin of pride. And again, from this perspective, sins of pride are the most grievous because they stem from a desire which involves more plainly contempt of God and his laws, and aversion from the eternal good out of that contempt for God, which is worse than out of moral weakness or misjudgment, turning towards the created good. Article 7, whether pride is the first sin of all. As it is written in the book of Sirach, as translated in the Vulgate, pride is the beginning of all sin. Sin, as we defined it, consists again of two things: turning towards the mutable good and away from the eternal good. And since the essential aspect of this movement, what makes it sinful, is the turning away from God part, and because this is what pride consists in, the willful contempt of God in pursuit of some mutable good, which will then add in the sinner's mind to their own personal excellence, then it is true that pride must be the first sin of all. Article 8, whether pride should be reckoned a capital vice. Pride is not reckoned a capital vice because it can be the cause of all the vices. All sin implies a certain turning away from the eternal law. If that turning away from God be for the sake of self-elevation, out of contempt of God, then we have pride. And again, this pride can take the form of vainglory or sloth or wrath or any of the capital vices. And so it is right to place pride above them, outside of the capital vices. And a word from St. Gregory the Great quoted within this article, "Pride, the queen of vices, when it has vanquished and captured the heart, forthwith delivers it into the hands of its lieutenants, the 7 principal vices, that they may despoil it and produce vices of all kinds." We move then on to question 163 of the first man's sin, Article 1, whether pride was the first man's first sin. Adam's first sin could not have been that of the lust of the flesh or the lust of the eyes. In other words, out of inordinate desire for the sensible good, because his passions would have been too perfectly subordinated to reason to practically allow for such a mistake. Adam was created whole or thoroughly integrated, endowed with both the natural and supernatural virtues requisite to hold his passions habitually subordinate to reason. And so again, it's just unthinkable for a man in such a state to throw away a spiritual good for the sake of a sensible one. And so Adam's first sin must have been that of the spiritual kind. Yet to desire spiritual goods is not necessarily evil, whether it be a desire for virtue or glory or honor. However, these desires become evil when they trespass the rule of God as known to the mind. And since the inordinate desire for an increase in personal excellence, which any of these spiritual goods would come with, is what pride is, then the first sin of man must have been that of pride. Now, someone might object to that, citing Genesis to the effect that what was sought from the tree was food, which pertains to gluttony, or knowledge, which pertains to the vice of curiosity. However, as Aquinas points out here, even though that would seem to be the case, such things were only sought for the ultimate goal, which was the ultimate temptation of the serpent, which was, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, the grasping of which pertains directly to pride. Article 2, whether the first man's pride consisted in his coveting God's likeness. And as we said back in episode 33 on the fall of the demons, neither the demons nor man in his original state would have been foolish enough to imagine they could become equal to God essentially. For to be a created thing, as an angel or a man, immediately and eternally kicks you out of the running of being him who is uncreated, which is only God. So neither man nor the angel's first sin could have been trying to be God, as God is God. Plus, both angel and man already were like God via their nature. They were images of God as being intellectual, and they were made in his likeness by participating in grace. So what then did man seek precisely in being like God, which cast him forth from the garden? And it's best to let St. Thomas speak here. He writes, "The first man sinned chiefly by coveting God's likeness as regards knowledge of good and evil, according to the serpent's instigation, namely that by his own natural power he might decide what was good and what was evil for him to do, or again that he should of himself foreknow what good and what evil would befall him. Secondarily, he sinned by coveting God's likeness as regards his own power of operation, namely that by his own natural power he might act so as to obtain happiness. On the other hand, the devil sinned by coveting God's likeness as regards power, the devil unwilling to be subject to God. Nevertheless, both coveted somewhat to be equal to God, insofar as each wished to rely on himself in contempt of the order of the divine rule, which is a useful thought to take to prayer. Both the devil and man sinned in wanting the freedom to rely upon oneself, a sin we repeat, Lord forbid, every time we attempt to make a way for ourselves to be happy, instead of taking the way provided for us, which will entail prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, along with all the other sacramental, moral, and ceremonial precepts Christ has enjoined upon us through his church. Article 3, whether the sin of our first parents was more grievous than other sins. And our first parents did not have unruly passions or the deprivation of grace which man is now born into with, and so thereby Adam and Eve were more culpable for their error, for they had such great assistance to make the right choice and yet still chose against God. And so although things like blasphemy and sacrilege are worse sins according to their kind than pride is according to the degree of culpability attendant upon their error, due to their exalted state, their first sin was worse than other sins which would come later. As Aquinas puts it, if we consider the circumstances of the persons who sinned, that sin was most grave on account of the perfection of their state. We must accordingly conclude that this sin was most grievous relatively, but not simply. Article 4 in our last article, whether Adam's sin was more grievous than Eve's. St. Thomas takes Adam's sin to be worse, since as the head of the family, the man, he fell from a more excellent position. Yet since Eve sinned against not only God, but also against neighbor, by enticing her husband to join her in sin, she is more at fault for this first sin of mankind. Plus, Adam may have a lessened culpability due to his natural desire to please his wife, which in this case did not help him in resisting sin. And that does it for another episode. Yet I would recommend checking out the text on these questions because there's a lot to consider here and slowly reflect upon and upon one's own spiritual life. We have just finished covering questions 162 and 163 of the secundae, that is of pride, and of the first man's sin. My name is Austin Habish with Think Catholic, and I cannot wait to see you tomorrow.